Assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope you guys are well. My name is Shanzay Subzwari. I am an artist and art writer, and welcome to the second session of the Art Lounge Talks. Today we have a very special guest on our session today. Her name is Zena Khan. She is a very, very talented curator and writer, and we will have her join this session right now. Let me just add her to this video. Okay, accept. She's just joining. I've sent her a request. Hi, Zena.
Hi, how are you?
How are you? Welcome to the Art Lounge Talks.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be on with you.
I'm really excited too. How are you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. It's late here, and I know it's evening for you as well. So this is a nice way to end the day, I think.
Absolutely. So for everybody who's watching, Zena is in Malaysia. That's where she lives, Kuala Lumpur, right?
Yeah, Kuala Lumpur,
Awesome.
The capital of Malaysia. It's a beautiful city.
The capital of Malaysia. Exactly, absolutely. So before we start, let me just give an introduction to Zena. For those people who don't know her, I'll give you an introduction. So Zena Khan is the curator of the Afk Collection, which is the Aliya and Farouk Khan Collection, which is regarded as one of Asia's foremost art repositories and research resources. It focuses on the growth of Malaysian contemporary art from the first generation of artists till present day. Zena graduated from the Royal College of Art in London in 2017 with a master's in curating contemporary art. Zena is passionate about creating access to emerging art ecologies, and she does this through commissioning international artists for physical exhibitions, for example, at Battersea Power Station and Delfina Foundation in London, and digital exhibitions such as Homing In, which was commissioned by Arts Council England and Platform Asia, which I was also part of. And she also publishes books and essays, and the use of writing as a form of both documentation and exhibition is key to Zena's curatorial practice. In 2019, she was the writer for the inaugural Malaysian pavilion at the 58th Venice Biennale. So cool. Guest editor of Bazaar Art Malaysia. And she has regularly contributed to several arts and luxury publications, such as a cultural columnist, among them Harper's Bazaar, The Art Link, Bureau, 24/7, and is it Mind or Mind? I forgot.
Mind.
I think it's Mind, right? Mind, okay. And Zena regularly writes for international art exhibitions and has produced several critical essays, books, and monographs on contemporary art. So that's Zena for you. Very long list.
Thank you for that introduction. And it's great. I can see so many friends, and some of my aunts have joined too. So hi, aunties.
Yes. And in fact, I'd like to tell everyone, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in. And instead of putting them in the chats, you'll see this little icon, which is like a speech bubble with a question mark in it. So that's where you can put in all of your questions. And in the end, we can take them, just so that they don't get lost. Okay. So let's start with the questions. So Zena, your trajectory is very interesting. You started off with a BA in jewelry design from Central St. Martin's, London in 2007. And then about 8 years later, you pursued a master's in curating contemporary art from the RCA, the Royal College of Art. So can you tell us a little about your journey, how your practice evolved from jewelry design to curating?
Well, thank you for saying it's interesting. And I think the word journey for me is how I describe my career, and my life seem to be one. And I think that that's very, very lucky. And I think this journey from being a jewelry designer to a curator and writer is one that I've been allowed to take this journey because I was fortunate to have a creative undergrad. And I think my creative degree BA really gave me a thorough understanding of the creative process, a real appreciation for the creative process. And I think it's been a huge help as a curator. So I graduated with my degree in jewelry design, and then I had a jewelry studio, worked for a couple of years as a freelance designer in London. And then I had a jewelry studio in Bali, and spent my 20s, mid-20s living in Bali by the ocean, making jewelry. Quite a great way to spend your 20s.
What a life, Zena. What a life.
showing in New York Fashion Week.
Yeah,
But then
wow.
I
Wow.
also spent a lot of time in Malaysia, which is where I'm from Singapore and I grew up in Malaysia and my parents are here. And
Right, right,
spending that time with them, I would go to art shows, I would go to studios, and they had amassed, been acquiring and building, assembling the AFK
right,
collection. It's assembled by my
right.
parents, Aliya and Farouk Khan.
Yeah,
And I began
yeah,
to see this kind of chasm between the art that was produced in Malaysia, which is just a phenomenal, dynamic, gorgeous contemporary art industry and super intellectual. And kind of what I
yeah.
saw, aside from the AFK collection, the institutional support. And I felt that I had access to information and artists that, even my friends in society, people that I met, they didn't really know about this art industry. And the best way to know about anything is to read about it, right? Like read about it in the
Right,
papers, read a
right.
book about it. Like that's where I get most of my information. So I
Right.
thought, look, I think it would be great to really start writing about artists, artworks, even the movement as a whole. So
Yeah.
I began to write, and it was really quite simple
Wow.
in that sense. I just would write catalogs for exhibitions for contemporary art galleries on a really simple format of like artist biographies and kind of what I call artwork biographies. So information on an
Oh,
artwork, how is it made, what inspired the artist, where does this work sit in their entire practice, and
okay.
and then the galleries and I started putting this writing up next to the artworks at shows to give information, and it was revolutionary. People loved it.
Wow.
And so as I was doing that writing, which was and remains the main part of my practice, I realized I found other parts super exciting about the art world. And the curating snowball. I started, supporting artists to make works. I started curating exhibitions, writing for publications,
Wow.
luxury publications, such as Harper's
Right.
Bazaar, uh,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
where I'm currently the cultural contributor, and I love working with them. And then I decided,
Right.
you really need to sometimes formalize these experiences a little bit. And in education, if you're fortunate enough to be able to do that, is the best way to do it. So I
Yeah.
pursued my master's in curating at the Royal College of Art in London and graduated in 2017. And, I think it
Fantastic
was a great
institution.
decision.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I had a
Yeah.
great time
Yeah.
there. I had a great, great time there.
It's
And so that's
London. Why
kind of,
wouldn't you?
well, it's very cold in
That's
winter,
oh, true.
as you
So a
know.
little about, yeah, absolutely. So a little about the RCA, the Royal College of Art, a little about its teachers and mentors and how they helped you evolve, maybe.
So the Royal College of Art I think it's the world's only fully postgraduate art and culture school, higher education institution.
Right.
And I had always, it's next to Royal Albert Hall, it's opposite the park. And it was always like this beautiful, really cool building I would pass by. And I always thought, oh, I'd love to go in there and study because it's centrally located.
Yeah.
It's near museums, it's near galleries. And when I decided to apply, I applied there and to the Goldsmiths. And I always talk about my interview. I had a great interview when I went in. It was a tough interview. And there was one tutor who interviewed me, Rebecca Heald, and she taught me on my first year. And she's a wonderful curator. She's worked in all sorts of positions. And she taught me a lot. What I really learned at the RCA from her, from my course director, who was my first year professor, Professor Victoria Walsh, from Dr. Ben Cranfield, who oversaw my thesis, was the more kind of formal. I think that I understood the art world. I think I understood how it worked. And I think that was from this kind of very hands-on approach I had taken. And when I went to the RCA, it was about grounding myself in theory. And a lot of things I kind of saw or felt, I realized that there were theories about it. Theories about qualitative experiences over quantitative, theories about cultural gatekeeping, theories about the birth of the emerging art ecologies, all happening at different times, not traversing a single timeline that begins with the West. These were things that I had felt very strongly, and going to the RCA helped me kind of theorize and intellectualize that. But I will say the best thing about the RCA, and I think any art school, is your cohort, your peers. I had a phenomenal class. I love each person in my class. I think we're a strong unit till today. Everyone's done super well, gone on to create institutions like Play to Tokyo, Nottingham Contemporary, for major international biennales like the Sydney Biennale.
Wow.
And we gave each other a lot of support. We all had different strengths, and I felt that everyone was very generous about supporting and teaching each other. So we've learned about each other's art movements, each other's interests, and we've really grown, and we still stay in touch. We do projects together, and it's a great sense of camaraderie, which was the best.
That's amazing, Zena, and I think it's truly a really big blessing if you have people in your cohort who you get along with, because I'm assuming otherwise it can become a lonely experience, or maybe just not as exciting. But when you have like people who are like-minded, or even if they aren't like-minded, even if you just share a chemistry with them, I think that can enhance your experience so much more.
Yeah.
So that's lovely to hear, and also the fact that you're still in touch. Yeah, that's lovely.
Which is nice.
That's lovely.
And it's great, when we travel to see each other, and it's
Oh.
And I think doing a degree is an experience unlike, it's a very different experience. It's a very unique experience, and only the people on your class in your year kind of fully understand that specific experience because they're doing it with you.
Exactly. You're the only one who went through that, and that's lovely. Yeah, I did. Yeah. I was also lucky to have a good cohort of people. We became friends really quickly, just 7 of us. But then, that enhanced the whole experience so much more. So I get what you're saying. So let's move on to the AFK collection, which is one of Asia's foremost art repositories and research resources. And the AFK collection stands for the Aliya and Farouk Khan Collection, who are your parents, which is amazing. And this collection has over 1,000 artworks, which is amazing again. So as the curator of the collection, who also happens to be Aliya and Farouk Khan's daughter, can you tell us how your parents amassed such a collection, and also whether the process of your parents collecting these works helped you develop your appreciation and knowledge of art? And is this why you pursued curating and maybe even writing as a career?
So, as you said, the Aliya and Farouk Khan collection, the AFK collection, is it's a collection of contemporary Malaysian art, and it really begins with the first generation of contemporary Malaysian artists. It starts kind of in the early 80s is the slow burn. The 1990s and the 2000s are what AFK, I call my parents AFK, what AFK describe as the kind of golden period, the really strong, explosive moment. And the collection's a living collection, so it's continually added to. Actually, right behind me is a young mid-career artist, Fawaz Shukri. You can only see a bit. Great painter.
Very cool, yeah.
So we're still collecting. Very pop, really great. He's a young artist I've been working with, and I love his work. I was very, very fortunate, I think, to grow up in an environment where my parents were collecting art, and they were so intellectually engaged with the Malaysian contemporary art movement. It's definitely impacted my life, my decision to be a curator, because I saw from the beginning the value in what they were doing. They were from the beginning engaged in the very important process of collection building. And I understand this is something that I think is very important for collectors. So collection building is a skill. It's a real skill, and it's dependent on an intelligent response to a series of factors. This includes art historical knowledge, understanding the society that your art movement is in, and interpersonal relationships, which should never be underestimated. For the AFK collection, Aliya and Farouk began with a thorough identification of the narrative of the Malaysian contemporary art movement. And they began this in a way that I really want to emphasize. They didn't rely on what other people told them or like existing texts. They actually went out and did primary research. And they're not actually art historians, even though they're today regarded as the foremost experts of Malaysian contemporary art in the world. But they really did primary research. They went and they saw artists, galleries, curators, collectors. They spoke to anyone and everyone. They drove, we're in Malaysia and we live in Kuala Lumpur, which is kind of the middle of the peninsula. And the highways, the north-south highway that kind of bisects the whole country had just been built, and you could move through the country really quickly in the 90s when they began collecting. And my sister and I just talk about this all the time. We remember them constantly hopping in the car. There was no Waze, there was no Google Maps. They'd have their paper maps and they'd drive around the country seeking art knowledge. This engaging in primary research and the all important act of viewing artworks I think they did this every day, really informed their knowledge, and they began to understand the true narrative of the Malaysian contemporary art movement. How and when did it begin? What are the dominant genres? Who are the major artists? What are the important artworks? And once they understood for themselves all of this information, they began to assemble the artworks that form the collection along this narrative. So when we step back today, the collection is not it's not simply an acquisition of artworks that they've admired, but it has a real value. And the value is, when I talk about value, I talk about historical and cultural value through which people are able to understand the development of the contemporary art movement. And I think it's one of the most important contemporary moments, the contemporary art for contemporary art's emergence in Southeast Asia today. And you have to remember,
and then they did this at a time when not many people were collecting in Malaysia, right? This is something that maybe gallery they were, but maybe not to this extent, or maybe not with this level of research.
Yeah, so what it is, I mean, you have to remember, galleries are going to sell you works. This is not a bad thing. The galleries are going to sell you the works that they have access to. Collectors are going to tell you about artists they already collect. So for AFK, they wanted to move beyond kind of what was going on in a more social scene and actually focus on the art. And there was no collection of contemporary Malaysian art at this time. And so it was difficult for them to actually get the information. And they then did this primary research. And this independent thinking that they did has really allowed them to assemble such an important, such a revolutionary collection. And they, in the process, gained, produced, and shared knowledge on our stunning Malaysian art, contemporary art movement.
Amazing.
And as you say, nobody else here was doing it very seriously, and I'm super proud of them. And it's big shoes to fill, but I think my sister and I are trying really hard to keep up. And witnessing this approach. Thanks. Witnessing their approach to collection building has really greatly informed how I practice as a curator. My dad has this mantra. He tells me, follow the art, and I try and do that. I try to follow the art, like a little investigator. And talk to artists, look at artworks, and form my own thoughts and opinions, irrespective of what the popular thinking is. You have to say, what do you think? You have to stand up for what you believe in. What do you think the truth is in art?
Absolutely. And
we've also got we've moved into the digital. We've got a website. We've put everything online. You can see the link in my bio, www.afkcollection.com. And we've got an Instagram as well, where we share news, we share artworks in the collection, we write about it, to try and create kind of worldwide access.
So this Instagram is at the AFK Collection. Is that what it is?
At AFK Collection.
At AFK Collection. In fact, you could even add it to the comment, or I'll add it later. So this, I think everybody should visit these resources, because it's kind of like, something that everybody really needs, but we don't have too many resources. So to have access to these things is helpful for everybody. And even for Pakistani artists who like to expand their knowledge, because often our knowledge is limited to Pakistani artists and maybe artists from the USA and UK, so I kind of understood this. As part of my MFA, we went for this art fair in Madrid, Arco Art Fair, and I realized I hardly know anything about Spanish artists or artists from the Hispanic world, but there's so much going on, and I think it's very important to expand your knowledge.
It is.
So that's a service that connections. You can make connections, exactly. And I think that's kind of with every kind of knowledge that we are sort of absorbing, because it tends to be a little limited. It's either limited to our country and a few other countries, but I think it needs to be more holistic. So that's something that should happen. So when we're talking about this collection, it's a massive collection, more than 1,000 artworks. So for people who wouldn't know, and for myself as well, what is involved in the managing and storage of such a collection? Where is it stored? How is it managed? How do you create an inventory?
So you need a super organized collection manager, and we are very lucky because we are blessed with my older sister, Zena Khan, the world's most
Lovely.
organized human being, who runs a really tight ship and keeps us all in line.
That's amazing.
Very strict with us. But jokes aside, she's extremely meticulous and organized. And she oversees it. And she's just this tiny little firecracker.
Wow.
We do everything in-house. So she collection manages, I curate, my parents are the collectors, it's their vision. And I think because we've seen them amass the collection, we've seen the hard work that's gone into it, we really feel very strongly about it. And so you know, we've purpose-built storage spaces for the art. You go in, you do inventory, you do conservation. My sister leads that, she manages it. She's extremely dedicated to it. Like no one else I think I know. And I think it's having that personal link to it also helps making it something. And we're proud. We love Malaysia. We love Malaysian art. You know, we really wanna look after it. We wanna do this really well and you know, honor our parents' legacy. And I have to say it was so funny because I'm working, obviously I work with her, and she's currently 8.5 months pregnant, and she's not slowing down. She's on top of it. She's organizing, inventorizing, managing, talking about it, doing a lot of the comms work behind it. You know,
I think when it's family, the level and the intensity of dedication is different altogether. So that's wonderful. Like you both have taken charge of different aspects of maintaining and, you know, taking this forward. So that's lovely.
Yeah. And I think we support each other. Yeah, we support each other well. You know, I've got a great relationship with my sister. We genuinely like each other. I think my parents really fostered that. And we're only 1.5 years apart. So, you know, we're super tight, and it's nice to work together, I have to say. Yeah.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. So now your mother is from Pakistan and your father's from Singapore, and you live in Malaysia. So that's a very interesting melting pot of cultures and experiences that you grew up with. So can you tell us how has this shaped you as a person, or the influence this has had on you?
You know, I have to say, like, people ask me all the time, where are you from? How do you identify? And I always say I'm Singaporean, Pakistani, from Malaysia, because I think I'm extremely lucky. I think I feel like I'm from all three places. And I think there are three wonderful and phenomenal places. So I'm really happy to be able to lay some claim to all three. I think that all three places have different things to recommend them, but very important things to recommend them. You know, they're full of, and the most important thing I think for all three places are the people. You know, and I always say this to people, like, I love Pakistan because it's full of these really dynamic, creative, strong-willed individuals. You know, I've never met a Pakistani who's a shrinking wallflower, for example. You know, everyone's opinionated and intelligent and informed, and it's wonderful, you know. And Malaysians and Singaporeans also, it's just a wonderful place. Everyone's warm. I find everyone that I've met from all three places are really curious, really creative, and that's informed a lot of, I think, my own curiosity in life. But the three places are very different kind of in terms of landscapes. Singapore, I'm sure everyone knows, is a city-state, and you've been there yourself. It's a city-state, and it's like a financial center, and now they're really developing their arts and culture infrastructure. Malaysia is a gorgeous, lush peninsula, and then we've got East Malaysia as well. It's just, you know, you've got the cities, you've got the beaches, you've got the forests, and everywhere you go is just visually so stimulating, and it's got this beautiful, really deep and specific culture that I've understood, I think, quite well. I hope I have and will continue to. We are in the Nusantara, that's our geographical area, and we're very specific culturally. And then being able to marry that with my knowledge of, you know, Pakistan, which has this incredible ancient history. You know, we would go as kids, and it was just like, it was almost like a fantasy for us. And you'd go and we'd do all these which I'm sure to you sound really irregular, but to us was magical. We would buy colored glass bangles and go to Qavalis and really immerse ourselves in all of that. And
geographically, Pakistan is everything from the sea to like the mountains, which we have hoping to visit together, because I haven't seen enough either.
Shanzay and I have a plan to go to Hunza Valley, which my mother was telling me about, growing up and holidaying in Hunza Valley and the glaciers, and it sounds like a fairy tale when she tells me these stories. It sounds incredible.
It does.
Yeah, she's actually in Pakistan right now, so
exactly. But also when it comes to, for example, festivals, etc., because, you know, you perhaps did you then celebrate different festivals? You know, festivals from
Oh
Malaysia,
yeah.
festivals from Pakistan. You know, so that's
So,
must have been
so
interesting.
Singapore and Malaysia, I have left this point out, and it's great you brought it up. It's extremely multicultural. We have kind of three main
Yeah.
races that make up the countries. So it's the
Mm.
Malay population, the Chinese, and the Indian, and then there's a lot of mixed. So
Right.
we celebrate every holiday. It's a great thing about Malaysia and Singapore. You know, we've got
Amazing.
Eid,
Yeah.
both Eids. We've got Chinese New Year, Diwali, which is coming up. You know, Thaipusam, Vesak Day, Christmas, Easter, and we celebrate them all with great
Amazing.
gusto. It's a
Amazing.
really, and it's a great way to understand each other's cultures. And we do everything, you know, Diwali, we go with the firecrackers, we visit our friends, you know, Eid, everyone comes to the big open houses and eats the Malay food with us. Chinese New Year, you go
So
visit
cool.
your Chinese friends, play poker, Chinese cards, you know, it's really fun. It's really, really fun. And you eat
That's
all the
wonderful.
different types of food. You have to visit us to eat our food. It's probably the best in the world.
Would love to.
Which is another form of culture,
That's
you know, the culinary arts.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely, absolutely. Brilliant, Zena. So you are closely connected to the art world in Malaysia and Pakistan, which is quite a unique experience for someone to have. So can you talk a little about that? Like any thoughts on the possibility of creating cross-cultural connections between the two countries?
I think I'm very closely connected to the Malaysian contemporary art world, and I'm building my connection to the Pakistani contemporary art world, which I just love. I think it's an incredible dynamic industry, and it's just got a great energy, and Pakistanis make beautiful, beautiful work. There's a lot of similarities and differences, and I think our earlier point of learning about different ecologies, not just the ones we're in, and then the Western ones, is so important because you can create connections. One that I've recently been feeling very strongly is this use of this updating of historical, maybe craft practices to speak about the contemporary experience. It's something I've been really, really invested in Malaysian art, how artists such as Anikataini Madian, who's a major female sculptor here, takes traditional Puak Kumbu, which is an Iban waft woven textile and woodworking, and makes these really gorgeous contemporary sculptures. Or other artists take batik styles such as Hafiz Shahimi, and instead of doing traditional batik style, understood how it's done and reinterpret it by doing it with fire and making pyrographic prints.
Wow.
And then recently I saw, I very much appreciate the practice of the Pakistani contemporary artist Hamra Abbas. And she's just made that beautiful, huge, monumental floor sculpture in marble. Oh my God, it's gorgeous. And again, it's that kind of the marble inlay that's from the Mughal traditions, Mughal architecture. So you can see there are very, very clear kind of parallel that begins to emerge. And instead of constantly reading ourselves through a Western lens, which is also great and fine, we can read ourselves through each other's histories and contemporary conditions. And I think this becomes really important for example, Malaysia and Pakistan, because we're both ex-British colonies. We're both, you know, there's so many similarities you can find, you know. We both, as you say, are geographically diverse. We're both ex-British colonies. We both have Muslim majority. There's so many things we can flesh out and try to understand how and understand each other. So I'm hoping to be able to do that more and more, inshallah, in the future.
Inshallah, inshallah. So Zena, can you tell us about a day in your life, a quick run through? What do you do from morning to night? A typical
Here's a chance to make myself sound really productive. You know,
go for it.
Go for it. I think all of us are just so, especially in this lockdown, we're so constantly hyper connected to the digital. So recently I've really been trying to create new routines for myself and break away from that. So I would wake up and immediately like be on my phone, like what's happening on Instagram, who messaged me, what emails did I get? And I've stopped that. I live with my parents. And now I wake up in the morning, I get a coffee or a hot water with lemon, and I just go and I sit with my parents for half an hour and I talk to them. They're usually watching a documentary about travel or history in the morning. And I sit and we watch that and we talk about, you know, political news, cultural news. My dad and I will talk about my sister's kids and what they've been up to the last couple of days. After our favorite topic of conversation. And then I try and go for a workout first thing. I find if I start my morning with that, you know, slow build up, it helps me with my day. So then I tend to start work like 9:30, 10, and then I go till early evening. And I split my day again into two sections, like before lunch and after lunch, like a BC and AD to my day. And I try and do kind of calls and studio visits and gallery visits in one half, and then reading and writing in the other half. Because I feel like then I'm kind of in a flow. And I think anyone who works from home understands this. You've got to create your flow. And
it's
my last activity.
It's but for people like me who are trying to figure out how to do everything at the same time, I think it's a great tip to divide your day or keep certain hours for certain tasks. Yeah, that's awesome.
Because also, when you're doing anything creative, you kind of need, I always describe it as mental space. So even when I write, I need to sit down. Oh my God, I sound like such a Lord Byron poet. I need to sit down and read something for a half an hour, or 15 minutes even, but I need to read something that really kind of immerses me, changes my mindset, and then I can go off with my writing. And my last activity of the day, I love when it's Netflix. As we were saying earlier, I'm rewatching Grey's Anatomy.
Yes,
but I started this
to unwind.
I started this new thing. A friend of mine gifted me Art in Theory, the huge book. I should have brought it out to show you. I'll put it on my stories later so everyone can see it. And it's just basically an anthology. It's about this thick. It's huge, of essays from the 1900 till 2000. And my friend Farah gifted me a copy in the first COVID lockdown. And I am every night, I read one, it's short essays and pieces of text from catalogs and stuff. I read one piece of writing every night before bed. And I was really enjoying this. And this Malaysian artist who I absolutely love, Ivan Lam, is really important. He was in the Venice Biennale Pavilion, and he's super intellectual. He's great. I love him. I put it on my stories, and that was my routine. And he messaged me, and he was like, "Oh my God, you and I have the same routine." And I felt, wow. Obviously, I'm doing
with the same essays.
It's the same book. He's like, I have that book, and I read one essay every night.
Wow,
I felt very clever after that. Yeah.
But what are the chances?
Nice way to wind down. Well, I guess it's not as revolutionary as I thought my idea of reading that book nightly, maybe. But it's really nice. Yeah. And
because I struggle with that, then. I mean, I have books on my bedside table, and the problem is, I know I want to read them, but my brain just cannot. Like these days, what happens is I'm on my phone, and to unwind, I start watching YouTube videos, and then that goes on for 3 hours, and then it's like 4 a.m. So I'm sorry, I'm telling the world about my terrible schedule.
Your mother is gonna hear this. No, you know.
I know.
It's so easy to fall into that rabbit hole, and it actually stops you. Life advice, break from curating. It stops you from being able to actually unwind because of the blue light. So reading a tip that I learned from the RCA actually is you don't have to read the book cover to cover. You can pull out sections and read it, mark bits that you like, and go back to it. That breaking things up makes things more manageable.
That makes sense. The thing is, as a kid, and maybe a lot of people face this, as a kid, I used to read massive novels. I love to read. My attention span was great. But this has to be some, effect of social media in your life, where you need to be constantly stimulated, and maybe reading
hyper-connected.
Hyper-connected. And no, that's a good idea. We are. I think I need to switch my phone off at a certain point. So that's something I need to do. But that's amazing. Though. Okay, so Zena, just a second, I'm going to switch off the fan. So now, which qualities do you think you have that make you a successful curator and writer?
I think curiosity is a quality that really makes me has helped me in my career. I'm super curious. I'm very, very curious. I'm genuinely curious. I'm curious about the world around me. I'm curious. That's why I love to read, because I want to know things. I want to know stuff. Tell me stuff. I'm very curious about people, like people's stories, what makes them tick, what they like, what they saw, what they thought. I think this really helps me, like with artists, I think that I hope at least, as an artist I've worked with, maybe you can tell me if this is true. I think I can, by asking all these questions, really trying to get to the crux of how artists are working, I can understand I make them feel seen. I know how to communicate their work, their thoughts, their processes. And I think that curiosity helps me to understand the world around me and give audiences what it is they really want and need. A quality that I think really helps me is that I love contemporary art. I love contemporary art. You know, I am
That's amazing.
immersed in art morning, noon, and night. I live surrounded by it.
Yeah.
I go out to look for it. I'm on
Right.
like hunting for art all the time. And it sounds really obvious, but if you want to work successfully in art, you've got to love art. You've got to look at art. You've got to read about art. You've got to talk about art. You've got to be curious about
Live it,
art.
eat it, sleep it, all of that.
And what a beautiful thing, you know?
What a beautiful thing. And no, I can tell Zena, I can vouch for this, because when homing in was happening, I mean, the questions that you used to ask, you genuinely cared. And they weren't just on the surface level questions. You know, if I gave something to you, you gave something back, you know, you caught on to a point and you asked in further detail. And that's what I think makes something more wholesome. So your writing, you know, that accompanied our artworks. I think that's
Thank you so much for saying that.
Art for that. That's amazing. So Zena, some significant achievements or experiences that you're proud of? There are many, I'm sure, but just some for the sake of this talk.
Well, I'm really proud of having guest edited Bizarre Art in 2019, of the same year having written for the Malaysian inaugural Malaysian Pavilion at Venice Biennale. But a project that I'm really, thank you. And it was fun. It was fun to go to Venice and see my name on the wall. I took all these photos of me.
Wow.
Like,
so cool. No, that's really. Maybe you could put up some pictures in your, like, for people who are watching this and would like to see. Maybe you could share some images in your
I'd
stories.
love to do that. I'll do a story later of that's a great idea, actually. But you know, I think a significant experience that I'm really proud of, that I hope has made a difference to the Malaysian art industry, is a project I did in 2016 called Debunking the Myth. Debunking the Myth was an essay supported by 2 exhibitions, physical exhibitions. And it drew on artworks from the Afk Collection to challenge the existing narrative of figurative art in the canon of Malaysian art history. So what I did is I examined the history of the figure in Malaysian contemporary art. This project felt very urgent to me because there was a theory that was being propagated, widespread propagated by post-colonial writers and curators in Malaysia and Singapore mainly, that the figure was obsolete in Malaysian contemporary art. Which is something that I didn't feel was true, because I lived surrounded by art and I'd seen art, and the figure was expansively and expressively and regularly, consistently produced in every medium and guise. But this theory was propagated, I realized, as a result of Malay Muslim artists from the 1980s beginning to turn towards a newly emerging contemporary art movement and developing these very challenging contemporary artworks. You know, and it went beyond, I think, the understanding of the writers and curators of that period, the works that they were producing. So then the writers and curators, they said, oh, this movement, because it wasn't portrait painting and figurative work, it was moving into maybe abstract expressionist or mixed media or installations, like things that perhaps did not have the figure in them, often did not have the figure in them. And they said that this is a movement away from figurative art and a growth of the Islamic art movement, which they then said, oh, has resulted from the Islamic Revolution in Iran.
Right.
So so instead of taking the time to understand the growth of the contemporary art movement in Malaysia, and that it was emerging, there was this theory that has just gone on, because people here work on a text-to-text basis. They go back to texts that other people have written and build on it, rather than going and talking to artists and looking at artworks. And sorry, 1 second, my internet's gone off. Oh, that's better. So instead of taking the time to actually understand this contemporary movement, there was this theory that the entire contemporary movement was a turn away from the figure and a turn to Islamic tendencies, which I didn't agree with. And, you know, I thought it was a cultural myth, and I thought it needed to be debunked. So I did Debunking the Myth. And, you know, today we can see it was fun. And today we can see there is no substantiation of this theory that it was a turn away from the figure and towards Islamization. Instead, we can see the contemporary movement has just bloomed from strength to strength. And it's incredible. You know, I was very inspired by Jean-Paul Martinon, a philosopher. He has this theory of the curatorial, and it's beautiful. I can't remember the exact quote off the top of my head, but what he advises us to do is to turn away from received knowledge. He said, you know, you're constantly receiving knowledge. People are constantly telling you stuff. And you got to say, okay, put it to the side, and then you yourself go and you yourself investigate. You say, like, is this true?
Right.
People
That
told me
makes
that
sense.
contemporary art was, they didn't acknowledge contemporary art. They said the figure was not produced and there was this massive Islamic art. And I was like, is this true? So I actually went back to the source of knowledge, which is the artworks themselves and the artists. And I
That makes
investigated.
sense.
And I
And how
found
was
that
this
not
received,
only...
Zena?
I think it's been received well. I think it's a tough conversation to have, because you see,
Right.
a big part of the value of this project for me is that it explains why how the contemporary movement here was not understood by the writers and curators of the period. Now, when you don't understand the contemporary movement, you don't know what the narrative is, you don't know that there is a contemporary movement, you're not going to collect the contemporary movement. Why were the institutions and corporate collections not building contemporary? Because they didn't realize that this was happening. So now we have an explanation for why there was no realization of that. So now what I think, hopefully, that they can read this essay, which is online. It's on the Afk Collection website under the publications section, where all our publications are available for free download and read. And you can go on there, you can read it, you can understand it, understand the contemporary movement, and the need to understand a contemporary movement, you need to look at the artworks, do primary research, understand the trajectory and the narrative. That's going to help our local museums and corporate collections, make their adjustments and begin very strong contemporary collections.
Absolutely.
Which I have to say is going to be competitive because...
I think this is again a service that you have provided, in the sense that, this is maybe history wouldn't have been recorded correctly, or maybe, people wouldn't have taken this in the correct way, but then you sort of brought them back on track to what the truth is. And that's a very important thing. That's a very important contribution from your side. So
and I just want to say to anyone who's watching, who's a writer, a curator, a museum, a gallery, etc., anyone who's in art, it's sometimes you figure something out, you say something, and it's not necessarily the most popular, it's not what everyone else is agreeing with. But if you can substantiate what you say and you truly believe in it, you have to say it. You have to say what's right. You have to do what's right.
Absolutely.
And that's a fun thing to do. And they're beautiful exhibitions. The works in them were beautiful. So that was fun to do and see.
That's an amazing lesson, Zena. That's an amazing lesson. Okay, let me just look at my camera a bit. Okay, so Zena, if you weren't a curator or writer, which career would you have pursued?
I think, this is my dream, I would have been a TV travel show host.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Many travel channels are watching. I'm available for that.
Yeah, because you love traveling. And yeah, exactly. Please, Zena's the best for this job. Take her on board.
No, I love traveling. I love going to new places, finding out new things. I love traveling on my own. I love traveling for art, which I think all of us in the art world do love. I love going to cities especially, and not just doing kind of the run, the checklist of what people say, but reading lots of different things on the city, asking people who've been. Now with Instagram, you can go on and look stuff up, and making my own little lists and ideas and having a plan and going and trying things out and going back and back cities and sharing my little list with friends. Again, here, my sister, actually, the collection manager who I mentioned earlier, is brilliant because she has in-depth, well-researched lists. So I can also just pick off her.
But you're also comfortable in front of the camera then? Because for you to be a host, that's an important thing as well. And if you are, then that's great.
I don't know. I always think I'm best live, like one-on-one and in live, but hopefully I'm not.
You're gonna have to make it happen then. Oh, you're doing great. So you this answers the question. Okay. So now, Zena, social media is a very important part of our lives now since the last 10 to 15 years, but more so the last maybe 7-8 years, especially with phone apps, etc. Has social media aided you in your career in any way?
Yeah, I think social media is really becoming an invaluable tool, As you say, in the last few years, but right now in the last 2 years with this type of isolation, it's gone like that.
You're right.
It's a really good way. Yeah, it's a good way to, it's a really good way to make, form, and keep connections. You meet somebody in passing, let's say in a city you don't go to often, like Madrid. You can follow each other and you can find out more intimate and casual things about each other that will help you connect the way it would if you were making a real life friendship. It's also a great way,
Right.
I think, to gather, to share and gather knowledge very quickly. You know, you can put up your
Absolutely.
thoughts, which I think is, and I think it's great for sharing what you think, for sharing things you've seen. I have been able to go, I mean, you and I actually, is an interesting fact, I think, for everyone to know, is you and I have never actually met live. We met through Instagram, and
Exactly.
we've
We
formed
said
a
we know each
connection.
other for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, we formed a connection in that way. I
Yeah,
guess, and
yeah,
I guess
yeah,
in
yeah.
the
That's
olden days, you would write letters.
yeah. But no, I'm just wondering though. I mean, if social media hadn't existed, would we have found each other? I mean, I'm not sure because
No.
I don't think so,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
It's
that's a
difficult.
lovely thing. And then just the collaborations that can happen with social media, just the way I don't know, like you have access to so much knowledge because of it.
Yeah, you
So
do.
I think it's a brilliant, yeah, it's a brilliant thing. And then also, or maybe you could talk about it either now or later, but also, you know, social media becomes a medium or a place of display as well for art, and that's a newer
Yeah.
thing. Um, yeah, that's a newer thing,
So
which
actually, that was the project that I curated that you were featured on, Homing In.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
and I can just talk about that for a bit now. That's a digital art exhibition, and I did it with an
oh,
ex-classmate of mine from the RCA, Chloe Hodge.
yeah,
We applied for this curatorial open call that Platform Asia had done. It was funded by the Arts Council England, and the brief was
lovely.
to do a digital art project featuring artists from South Asia. And we decided to
Mm,
commission 5 artists, 3 from Pakistan, yourself, Fatima Khademi,
mm,
Suleiman Faisal, then Himali Singh Soin, who's between Delhi and Germany and London, and Rajinder
mm,
Singh, who is a Malaysian Indian artist who was living in Dublin at the time, and I think has just moved to London. Um,
right.
and and the whole project was conceived, presented. I mean, the only artist I've met live out of everyone is Rajinder because he's Malaysian. Um,
Okay.
Conceived of online, and we were thinking of it as a test bed for how to meaningfully share art on the digital. And you know, I have always felt that Pakistanis in particular are really, really adept at Instagram and that they really like it. So, you know, there's that idea that
Really?
you, yeah, well, I mean, this is my impression, and I think it's correct. I think my test bed of Homing In has proven it correct. You know, instead of doing, you do the website and then you do the social media site to promote the website. But to just remove that, the social media site becomes where the website is, where the project is hosted.
Yes,
And there's a
you're
real sense
right.
of
You're right.
immediacy. You know, people can see things, they can engage with things. We try to create a sense of rhythm to mimic the way you would go through an exhibition in a gallery, because there's a rhythm to
Yeah,
how we view art. We were trying to really put that through, and we were very
yeah,
conscious that an artwork seen live or experienced live and an artwork uploaded to Instagram, which is a specific format with sizes and timings and all of that, would be
mm,
different. So an example
right.
is Fatima Khademi's work, which she did a
Yeah.
beautiful performance she proposed where she would sit and weave a carpet while listening to, she's a Hazara refugee, listening to audio sounds from her home, so
Right.
Afghanistan, but all Persian. So it was podcast, news, folk songs, pop songs. But you
Right.
know, it would be beautiful live. But if I just did an Instagram live for 10 hours of Fatima weaving a carpet, would it capture your attention? Instead, what we did was we
Yeah.
broke it down into a series of short videos, and we explained
Right.
what the audio was each day she listened to. So every day,
Right.
viewers knew that they could tune in and see the next act. And then at the end of it, we
Mm,
showed her carpet.
right.
Your
Right.
work, a beautiful video you made for us, which we loved, Ghabrana Nahi Hai,
Mhm.
very witty.
Yeah.
It's about, God, how long is it? I've forgotten.
Six,
25?
6.5 minutes, approx.
Six and a half,
6.5 minutes.
6.5 minutes,
Yeah.
7 minutes. I mean,
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
always watch an entire video on Instagram? Perhaps they do, perhaps they
Not
don't.
you.
But there were bits that just
Yeah.
stood out that, you know, that we really connected to as curators, and we pulled them out and we actually played them in the days leading up to the release of the video.
Yeah.
And in doing that, we kind of
So that,
spotlighted bits to look out for and what they meant. So it's really about thinking about how to use the medium meaningfully, because the
right.
trap with the digital is you don't have the limitation of physical space. So you can put
Exactly,
everything up.
yeah.
So how do you edit and curate the digital?
Exactly. I was just going to
I
say,
hope so.
how interesting is it that you've curated physical spaces and digital spaces, and that's a completely different kind of an experience, but it's
Thank
the
you.
same
And
sort
it
of
was,
framework. But how interesting. And Zena, has COVID-19 played a role or affected your work in any way, whether in a positive sense or a negative sense, or no?
well, I think I've just given this long explanation on homing in. I think homing in and
Yeah.
re-exploring the digital, which I never really thought of exploring in depth other than the AFK Collection website, and thinking about ways to really use it. So after homing in, I did a couple of quick Instagram projects with Malaysian artists. I did a silent auction for Hamir Shoaib, who's one of our major, most important painters in Malaysia. And found different ways to kind of engage people through Instagram. So I think it's kind of forced me to think in a really immediate and quick way. The downside I felt with COVID-19 is you become very insular, and even though we're able to see the world through our screens and through books, which is wonderful and I appreciate, I haven't been able to go out and see. And Malaysia's been in a lot of lockdowns. I'm presuming everyone was, but we've just coming out of our lockdowns. So you've been physically apart from the wider art world, from going to studio visits, from having those conversations that feed you, and that I miss. I miss going to museums and seeing Renaissance art. You know, art that you're not going to write about, but that you're just going to go and look at and appreciate. So I do miss all of that, you know, and hopefully we'll be able to get back to that soon.
Hopefully, yeah. Things are hopefully changing for the better. Fingers crossed, inshallah. So, Zena, for the many roles that you pursue, which role comes to you the most easy, or which one do you enjoy the most, and why? Is it writing or researching or curating?
You know, I think that I love researching the most because researching is the fun part. You know, it's going to look at artworks and talk to people at artworks and talk to artists about why they made the works. And it's a bit of my job that it actually feels like fun. It doesn't feel like work when you have to do that. It's like, I can't believe this is what I get to do. But you know, also I enjoy writing. I think a lot of writers have a tussle with writing because it's something that's really, it's surprising. I'm sure you feel this as well. It's surprisingly difficult to write, but it's a real privilege to be able to write. So I feel very privileged that I can write. And you know, there's that bit in an essay. It's like the sweet spot. It's about 40% in when you've started it, because the blank page is the scariest thing. And you've started it and you're in that rhythm and you know what you want to say and you're saying it and it's really great. And the conclusion always I'm always like, okay, this is the conclusion and you're done. But there's that moment as you're writing where it's just flowing through you and you're feeling really good about it and you're able to say the things you want. That's a beautiful moment. I think everything has its ups, and I definitely think that writing is the main part of my practice and I enjoy it, you know. I do a little bit every day and it's fun.
Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely. So you've made that your practice. Like every day you're going to take out time for it and do it for sure.
Yeah, even if it's like a short caption, like just a couple of words, like I do that. I do that. You know, it's writing, painting, sculpting. You know, I will say, and I was talking to Hamir Shoaib, the artist I just mentioned, about this on the weekend at a dinner, that being an artist, and I think in some ways being a writer, these are physical acts. And it's like an athlete. You've got to practice, being a musician, practice. And I used to sometimes try and take chunks of time off from writing, but I found I had to kind of restart that rhythm. So now sometimes I'll take a week, 2 weeks off, but I try and do something, even like write like a journal for entry for myself. And I would recommend to anyone who wants to write to constantly be reading and writing. It's something that you've got to keep the flow going.
Yeah. Good tip, Dana. So now then, do you think that fine art, whether it's exposure, it's creation, it's understanding, promotion, and collection, is primarily an exclusive thing? Or do you think art is something that's easily accessible to all?
This is the $1 million question that everyone asks, isn't it?
Layered question.
You know, people sometimes shy away from art because they presume it's exclusive, and I would like to say that art is not exclusive. Art is about the world around us, and the world around us is for all of us. You know,
Right.
perhaps buying expensive art is exclusive. You know, like, can we all go out and buy a Picasso, a Basquiat? That's not available to us, but we can go and we can see them and we can appreciate them, and they can make us feel things and make us understand things. So I think that art actually is and I think in all of its beautiful beauty, art is for all of us. And I think that I hope with my writing also that I kind of, you know, that's one of the reasons why I also wanted to write for luxury publications, is I wanted to reach wider audiences, you know, not just people who are reading art books, because people shy away. They're like, oh, that's for intellectuals. But everyone's going to pick up Harper's Bazaar or Vogue. More people will pick it up, not everyone, but and flip through and say, oh, I liked that essay, you know, and you're writing short, you know, 1-page, 2-page essays on something that captures your imagination, and you share it with people. And that I think creates the accessibility.
Yeah, and I think people here, for example, in Pakistan, often they shy away from this because they do feel that art, like if it's public art, then it's a different thing. But if it's like going to a gallery, people do shy away from it, but maybe because our culture hasn't developed enough. So, I mean, for example, in London, you know, generally everybody would like visiting galleries and museums. They're more accessible. But here, I think it's just about sort of it not having developed enough, or people not having information about it. And I think when they start going, it might become easier and more.
I mean, look, it's gotta be made available to you. You know, like in the UK, there's so many government bodies, public cultural bodies that have set up, you know, spaces where all of us can go and, you know, pop in and see an artwork. You can go and spend hours in a museum. You've got the whole gauntlet to run through, and that's great. I've actually just written an article for Harper's Bazaar. It's coming out in November, so
awesome.
Watch out for it, on public art in Malaysia. And I made this observation that I think is interesting about how here our public art is actually privately owned art, mostly privately owned art in privately owned spaces made accessible to the public. So a really good example of that is the Afk Collection does a kind of long-term rotating loan to this very central mall called Bangsar Shopping Center. If you're in Malaysia, you know it, BSC. So the back of BSC, it's an office lobby called Menara BRDB. It's a huge lobby. It's got beautiful space, and it's got 2 banks. So it's very, very popular. Got doctors' offices, all sorts of things in the building. Very, very popular, huge traffic traversing through. We put 4 big works up regularly. We've just changed the hanging as well. And that's a space people can go to see art. And I see people every day engaging with it. You know, they go, they stop, little kids are pointing things out, people are taking photos with it. When Leila and I, my sister and I, went to work on the rehang 3 weeks ago, I think now, we had to do it after office hours, and a few people were trickling out, and they were so excited, and they were saying to us, oh, we can't wait to see it tomorrow. So people, as you say, are people engaging? People need places to engage with it, you know, and this is the role of institutions and government cultural bodies to create those spaces. But you know, I feel very fortunate that we've been able to give people a little bit of something to see there.
That's amazing, then. So the key is to bring art to where people are, rather than not just bringing people to where art is, but also bringing art to where people are. Maybe I think both.
It's one way. Yeah, it's both. It's everything. You know, it's everything. Like in the UK, it's everything. I think that developing that, you know, through great bits of writing on art, through highlighting artists on Instagram, through maybe having a space where you can show a couple of works, you know, and you know, I feel like the commercial galleries I work with in KL, I think they're quite warm and exclusive. I feel that way, at least. I think a lot of the galleries here are, and you know, they try and create that space where people can feel welcome. And I think slowly that changes. Malaysia, people love seeing art. The general public loves seeing art. Galleries are always full. People like to go in and they look, and it's a great space for them to see works and to really kind of enjoy all of that. So that's great.
Yeah, lovely, Zena. Okay, so Zena, do you think that an art education is important to be a successful artist, curator, or writer?
Okay, so I am going to say that I think that a formal grounding for fine artists, a formal grounding in how to make art is essential because you got to know the
Okay.
rules to break the rules.
Yeah.
And
True.
what I
Good
true,
point.
and I always say, even if you don't want to be a painter, you want to be a performance artist. The act of drawing and being very good in it is essential because drawing not only will teach you the formal aspects of line, shade, composition, etc., that you need to know to kind of frame and make good visuals. The act of
Yeah.
drawing is the act of observing, of truly seeing and then communicating what you have just seen. So when you can
Right.
draw well, you're able to observe and analyze and communicate well. So therefore, I would really encourage, if you want to be a fine
True.
artist, to have to to ground yourself in some sort of arts education. I think it's very important. Um,
All right.
but
Great.
while
Yeah.
education is an important factor for a career in the arts, so too is, reading, trying out projects, understanding. This is true for writers. This is true for curators.
Yeah. Yeah.
Experience and experience, practice, trying things out, critiquing yourself, having people you trust come and critique you. These are all valuable tools. And
True.
I think they're
True.
just as important as the arts education.
True, true. Good point, Zena. I think in art and maybe in any other career, or maybe just in life, I think it's important for people to remember that your learning should never stop. You shouldn't think that I have a degree now and I'm done, or I've done a bachelor's degree, I've done masters, I've done even a
Yeah, yeah,
PhD and
yeah.
I'm done, because things are evolving so quickly, and like you have this element of curiosity, which is very exciting. I think that helps so much in life because
Yeah,
you
yeah,
learn every day, you're enhancing your skills. Life just seems more exciting when you're learning new
yeah.
things, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
think the
So,
the kind of trap that people fall into, that or one can fall into, is thinking, especially one has a degree from a really good school, is to think that, oh my God, I've got this degree, I know things. But you will learn something from everyone. This sounds
yeah,
silly,
yeah.
my niece is 2.5 and we do installations of art in the house, and she points things out to me, and just seeing her reaction to
Lovely.
works and seeing what strikes
Yeah,
people,
yeah.
having her say, oh my God,
Starting
she'll
young.
tell me she likes the color, or yeah, but what I mean is, it's not just her. Every person you encounter has something to teach you,
Exactly.
and it's
Exactly.
important to
That's
constantly
so
try and
true.
be open to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Susanna, what would you say to people who don't consider art or writing or curating to be an important or valuable career? Because we have all come across those people. What
To
would you
those
say to them?
people,
Yeah.
I say, can you imagine the past 2 years and this lockdown without art, music, books, film, TV, plays? Did I say music?
Exactly.
Music. I'm going to say music
Yes,
again.
music. Exactly.
Culture
Exactly.
feeds us. Culture feeds us. The people who make it and talk about it and share it are very
Yeah.
important. On a
Yeah. Yeah.
serious note, I want to point out that art and culture are one of the biggest drivers of economies. I mean,
True.
just look at the way the
True.
Middle East is developing itself with culture leading. If you want to be a global alpha city today, you've got to have a strong cultural component. Um, and understanding and believing in your culture is a way to have pride in yourself. And for countries,
Right.
people from countries like ours that are ex-colonies, I think it's very important for us to have this pride in ourselves because we have been colonized before. And having this pride in ourselves, understanding that we are intellectual, we're not anyone's inferior, we are intellectual, we're strong intellectually, we're
Exactly.
strong culturally. It's important for us because we have to safeguard against being colonized again. I don't think people are going to come
Yeah.
with boats and weapons to
Yeah.
colonize us, but
Yeah.
neo-imperialism is everywhere. You have to safeguard against those things. And once you realize
Yeah. Yeah.
all of these values, the economic value, the cultural value, the patriotic value of art for your society, the value of entertaining you, how do you say to me it is not an important and valuable career? It's obviously super
Exactly.
important and
Exactly.
valuable. Um,
Absolutely, I agree with you. You
I think
used the
so.
term the last time we spoke. You used the term soft colonization, and I remember I was mind blown. So, can you just say a line or two about what that is? Soft
Yeah, it was
colonization. I think it
I
was
think I said, oh God, I think I spoke a lot the last time I spoke. I think I was talking about soft
which
power,
is great.
colonization. I was actually just had a quick chat about this with my dad
Okay.
before he, oh God, it's around dinner time. A lot of in the Cold War, America, because Russia and America obviously were at loggerheads, and Russia was this cultural beacon. You know, that the ballet, that the Hermitage. You know, Russia is actually great novelists, and America had to combat that and make themselves seem intellectual. And the CIA very much promoted and supported the development of abstract expressionism. And we see, and you can read about all of this online. It's you can see how culture is used to tell us things. And so that also, I want to just point out that for me, when I talk about, sorry, I'm getting distracted by the comments. When I talk about the importance of recognizing our individual art movements, and that they start and stop at different times. So when I talk about the emergence of, let's say, contemporary Malaysian art, I date it to the 1980s, the slow burn, and exploding through the 1990s and 2000s. That is later than when contemporary art emerged in the West. Now, it's important to recognize that these things are different, that they've happened in different timelines. And it's not a single timeline that we traverse, with the Western timeline being dominant and all of us coming in later. Because when we think of it as the Western timeline being dominant and all of us coming in later, we then say we are culturally, intellectually slower. That gives other people the right, the authority to come in and colonize and civilize us.
Right.
But when we understand that we are culturally nobody's inferior, that we are strong culturally, that we have great stories, we're intellectuals, we have abilities, the culture allows you to realize how intellectual you are and how capable you are. So that's why culture is like I think I feel very much that it's a soft tool in kind of politics, in colonization and all of these things. It's a real soft power tool. I think the term is soft power tool. And I think you can read a lot about your politics of a society through your culture. I don't think culture is an accidental thing that kind of falls by and it's lovely and you kind of just shove it to the side. And I think it's a really, really important part of society. It's politically important. It's economically important. It's socially important. And I think you've got to have very serious people who are professionals and experts working on your culture, who've proven themselves to be successful in the things that they do.
Amazing. And we've heard a lot of terms that we can now add to our personal dictionaries, so which we will look up and which we will understand.
We'll look up the whole CIA and abstract expressionism movement. It's actually it's a super interesting story.
All right, I will for sure. So Zena, let's move on to our rapid fire round. Not a very original round, but it's fun nonetheless. So I thought of including it. So now I'm going to ask you questions and you can answer in one word or one line. Okay, just quick questions. Okay. So Zena, who is your favorite actress or actor and movie?
Okay. Favorite actress, Jennifer Aniston. How Good as Friends. Favorite actor, Tom Hanks. Favorite movie, You've Got Mail. It just breaks my heart every time. You know, Shanzay has not seen it. I have been really ragging her about this. You have to watch it at the end.
I have to, now that you've recommended it so much. And I can't believe I haven't seen it.
It's a beautiful movie. You have to watch it. It's my favorite.
That's lovely. Okay. I'm going to write that down right now. Must watch You've Got Mail. Okay, so Zena, if you were on a desert island, name one person and two things you would like to take with you.
If I was on a desert island, I would have to take my best friend, Dean Quinn, because he's one of the few people I can spend 24/7 with and who can calm me down when I start going loco. I would take a Swiss Army knife, because apparently they're good for everything. And then I would take a helicopter so I could leave the island when I realized I don't know how to use a Swiss Army knife.
Very smart. You have like a plan for how you're going to escape. Smart.
Escape to the city.
Rather than just survive, you're going to escape, which is awesome. Okay, one person dead or alive you'd like to take for dinner.
Unfortunately, very sadly, he's dead. I would like to have dinner with Azadine Aliya, who is my favorite fashion designer of all time. And you know, my mom has this story of being in Paris in the mid-'80s, and she stayed in this apartment in Paris, she and my dad, for a month, 3 weeks. And it was right opposite his atelier. And every morning, I think she was 24, 25,
Wow.
she would stand by the window and she would wait and she would see him get his coffee and go into his atelier.
Oh my
And I'm like,
God.
why on earth didn't you ever go down and bump into him and say hi? Oh my God, you know, because he's such a genius. But the way he was able to make really sculptural dresses and really change the way women dressed, and it makes the most stunning clothes.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
I would love to
Very
understand
cool.
his creative process and write about him.
I'd love to look him up too for that reason. Zena, what time of the day are you most creative?
After lunch, maybe between 2 and 6 p.m. And I actually hate having to work late at night, unless it's an install. But having to do work. It's a habit from childhood. My mother would make us come home, do our homework, then you could have dinner and unwind. So it's a lifetime routine for me now.
That's a great habit. I need to change mine because I work best at night and that sucks because I mentioned my sleep cycle. Okay. Zena, what advice would you like to give your younger self?
You know, I think it's advice I give to all young people: take more risks. But be safe while you're taking all these risks, everyone. You know?
Yeah, don't be too careful. I need to tell my younger self that as well. What scares you?
I think losing my parents scares me. I'm really close to them, and I mean, I'm an adult, but I don't feel like a fully functioning adult without them around sometimes.
I feel you.
I think we all feel that way.
I think we all feel that way,
yeah.
What's the most special thing about Malaysia?
Oh, I think the most special thing about Malaysia is, you know, I think it is quite possibly the most genuinely multicultural place in the world. And it's a great balance of the East and the West to me. You know, it's very Eastern, but it's got all the kind of things that I like about the West. So it's perfectly balanced for me. And the food's really good. And the art's amazing. Come to the art.
Now we all need to visit Malaysia. I'm booking my ticket, applying for a visa. And finally, the last question is one dream that you have. One dream of yours. Something you'd like to achieve, or anything else.
Oh God, my dream is to get my PhD.
Ooh,
I would love to have
awesome.
a PhD. You know, this is something I hope I can make happen in the next few years. To be able to really explore in depth one of the many questions I find so interesting of see Shrey Sethi Singh, he'll be right over. Yes, get a visa and come to Malaysia and see the art, Shrey. But being able to get my PhD, being able to really explore in depth one of the many questions that I find so fascinating about contemporary art is something that I would really,
amazing.
I hope I get to do.
I'm sure you will get to do. And we're all rooting for you, Zena. PhD. Woohoo. Amazing, Zena. Thank you for answering these questions so wonderfully.
No,
I had a great chat.
Thank you for having me. It was so nice.
No. But let's before that, let's move on to, because there were a lot of comments and questions. A lot of people were appreciating the talk. But we have some questions in the question area. Okay, hold on. Let me just read them. Okay. So one of them is from. Yes, I will. I don't know if you can see them actually, so I'm not sure.
I can't.
But Mariam Hina Hasnan Studio, who's a dear friend, she asks, really enjoying this conversation. She's saying currently having a look at the site, really appreciate creating the digital archive and access to such a significant private collection. Also was wondering if Zena sees any crossovers in the South Asian and Southeast Asian contemporary art worlds. Thanks. Maybe we've answered this before in some way, but if you'd like to say something
I think we did. I think there's tons of crossovers, you know. I think that these are two countries that are ex-British colonies that are now really coming into their own. And as people are becoming very independent-minded, the very dynamic populations are becoming very independent-minded. Not becoming, they are. You're seeing these really strong contemporary movements. So you've got kind of a macro there. You could probably read, as I read the kind of political, cultural, social history of Malaysia, you could read the Pakistani one in that way. But also, like I mentioned, you could get into like specific areas of interest, you know, the contemporization of craft technique. I think both Pakistan and Malaysia have very interestingly, very strong, very experimental female artists who really kind of lead the way in new genres. And that's something I'm really interested in exploring more. I love the contemporary calligraphy movement in Malaysia. I think it's very, very strong. It's been emerging strongly since 2013. I don't know much about the contemporary calligraphy movement in Pakistan. I'm not well versed. I do see a couple of things I like for example, Muzammil Rahil's work. I really enjoy his sculptures, which have calligraphy. That's something you can maybe
Amazing.
explore
I think
more
we
and
had
see
joined the
how artists
conversation
use.
earlier. I don't know if he's
Oh
still
yeah,
there, but I saw
I'm a
him.
big fan of his work. I think it's beautiful. That's
Yeah,
something to
yeah,
maybe
he's
explore.
amazing.
So I mean, you can draw loads of macro and micro
Yeah,
sections, and
yeah,
I
yeah.
hope I can do that at some point.
Absolutely, Zena. Now we have another question from Adil Zafar, who is a very well-respected senior
Oh,
Pakistani artist who does really cool work.
hey,
He
Deal.
has two questions. Actually, he has one question, and then he says, "What is your opinion on censorship?" And then he elaborates, saying, "I'm asking this specific question because there are times when voices are suppressed due to various factors. How do you read now while looking at the collection from the 80s and before?" That's the question. Should I, if you'd like, I can read it out again.
Okay, sorry, just so I understand.
So he's
It's
saying,
my
what's
opinion
your
on
opinion on
censorship.
he's saying, what's your opinion on censorship? And he's asking this question because there are times when voices are suppressed due to various factors, and maybe he means censorship with respect to
Oh,
art.
okay.
You know, you
Yeah,
made
no,
something and
I think,
yeah,
no, actually, I think I understand. I think what Adil is getting at from part of my talk, I'm presuming Adil is, I was talking about kind of a suppression of the contemporary art movement here because people weren't taking the time out to understand it. And I think that's a pity. I think if you don't take the time out to understand something, if you don't take the time out to be open-minded and to truly understand things, and instead your response is to suppress something, then you yourself only suffer, you know. That's my opinion on suppression, you know. That's why
yeah, yeah,
there was a myth that I wanted to debunk, and I went ahead and did that. And I try to talk about
yeah.
the emergence of the
Right.
contemporary strongly.
Actually, I experienced this during my first ever show post graduation. I'm not going to name the gallery, but I had made a piece on where I had the silhouette of the Qaid-e-Azam. And
Okay.
I thought that was okay because you see that a lot in galleries, and I've
Yeah.
seen that sort of imagery before. But I wasn't allowed to put it up, and I was so bummed because it was my first show, right? And I was like, "What's going
Yeah.
on?"
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think maybe different kinds of censorship sort of exist in different,
Yeah.
and a
I
part
mean,
of this has to do with safety, maybe. I don't
yeah.
know.
Yeah. No, it could be. You know, I mean, I admit I haven't been, as much as I love Pakistan, I haven't been now in over 5 years. And I can't comment with authority on
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that at all. I do find my experience with Pakistanis is they're open minded. You know, I think in Malaysia we're very, very gentle and open minded. I don't feel I feel like there's, you know, people are curious and open minded here. Yeah, like I said, there was a suppression or a lack of understanding of the contemporary earlier, and we're really trying to rectify that. And kind of say like, hey, you know, kind of use artworks to kind of figure out what the actual narrative
Right,
and
right,
truth is.
right. Thanks, Anna. If anyone has any questions, any final questions, you could quickly put them up in the box. We'll wait for like 30 seconds or something. But if not, I think we could,
Shanzay, you have like a starting gun.
Let me just see. There's some. Oh yeah, Mariam is saying, yes, you guys did. I asked very earlier. I'm sorry, Mariam. We did not see it because I just opened the questions bit right in the end. But thank you so much for the questions, everyone.
No, thank you guys so much for joining us. I super appreciate everyone joining in.
Yeah. There's
You're
been great
gonna
engagement.
upload this to your feed, and I'll share it. And if
I
anyone
will.
has any questions,
I
they
will.
can
I will.
feel free to get in touch with us.
Absolutely. No, I will. So, yeah, I am going to upload this as an IGTV video. I'm planning on having these sessions every 2 weeks. We had one with Mohammed Zishan. Zena was my second guest.
Great.
And I just feel privileged to know such, you know, talented people. And basically, I'll just tell you how this talk started. I had a number of people I knew in my life, whether they were my friends or just acquaintances. And I felt like, you know, in the time of COVID, when people have free time, they're on their phones, they want some sort of engagement, and this is like the best way to make it possible. And I was like, you know, what better way to do it than to start your own thing rather than relying on some other channel to take you forward, right?
Yeah.
So this is how it happened. And
I think it's great. I think it's great. Yeah.
So
I'd done a mini series of talks last year, but they were pre-recorded, a little IGTV series. It's at home with Art with
Amazing.
Zena Khan. It's on my, and I completely agree with you. I think people really, I think it's a great way to create engagement and to get those stories out there and to share, you know, the conversations that we have kind of on studio visits often.
Exactly. Yeah.
With a
Yeah.
sense of
Yeah.
intimacy.
Absolutely. But Zena, with that, I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for answering these questions so patiently, so wonderfully, and in such an
Thank you for
articulate
having
way.
me. Thank
I
you.
always enjoy talking to you. And
I was
we're going
talking
to
to
be
you.
uploading this, as I said. We can please check out Zena Khan's page on Instagram. And she's going to have everything there, the website, the AFK website. You know, maybe you put up some pictures, right, with respect to things we spoke about.
Yeah,
And yeah, I'm sure people will be
story
interested.
series.
So check it out there. I'm going to be saving this as an IGTV. And we will talk soon, Zena. Take good care of yourself. And thank you so much to everyone who joined and asked wonderful questions.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, Zena.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye.